Now that we have established why you've joined this class, let's delve into learning more about boundaries. What are boundaries? Let me read to you from the Boundaries book, a couple of paragraphs. In the physical world, boundaries are easy to see. Fences, signs, walls, moats with alligators, manicured lawns, or hedges are all physical boundaries. In their differing appearances, they give the same message. This is where my property begins. The owner of the property is legally responsible for what happens on his or her property. Non-owners are not responsible for the property. Boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. A boundary shows me where I end and someone else begins, leading me to a sense of ownership. Knowing what I am to own and take responsibility for gives me freedom. If I know where my yard begins and ends, I am free to do with it what I like. Taking responsibility for my life opens up many different options. However, if I do not own my life, my choices and options become very limited. Boundaries of all types are all around us. When we simply go out to the street, we have the boundary of the sidewalk. The road has a yellow line in the middle to separate the two directions of traffic. Road signs tell cars how fast they can go. Traffic lights tell cars when they need to stop, slow down, or go. Imagine if we didn't have any of that. It would be a complete mess. Let's think about another type of boundary which we have been seeing all around us. What kind of boundaries have we seen come together during the time of COVID? We used to be able to hug, maybe kiss each other on the cheek depending on your culture. We know Latinos, we do that when we greet each other. We were able to shake hands, sit close to each other. But what COVID has taught us is that we are vulnerable to a mysterious and deadly virus that enters our airways, and for this reason, we need to protect ourselves. Any area that is exposed or open needs to be protected during COVID. Therefore, we put on a mask to protect our mouth, we put on glasses or a screen to protect our eyes, and we stay at a distance from people to reduce the possibility of the virus jumping on us through bodily fluids of another person who's been infected. In Ontario, we were in 3 lockdowns in the last year and a half. Stores, restaurants, and personal care services were closed due to the spread of COVID. We were overwhelmed by boundaries due to COVID. These are examples of some physical boundaries that we experience daily during COVID, and we still continue to experience, right? Why are boundaries so important? The latter 2 examples that I just gave imply that they're important because they protect. They bring order, and it helps us to know what is allowed. Boundaries bring definition. They define what's okay and what's not. In simple terms, a boundary is a property line. Who owns the property? If we know who owns the property, we can know who's in it, who's in control of it, and who is responsible. In the physical world, it's easy to know who owns a property. But how do we define boundaries in relationships? It's less clear, right? And this is why it can get so gray sometimes, so muddled sometimes. We end up taking on other people's property because it can be so muddled. I mean, problems, not property. And we begin to own other people's property. I mean, problems. But when we begin to realize, hey, that person is responsible for their problems, not me. That is setting a boundary. That's just one tiny example. Boundaries are meant to keep the good stuff in and the bad stuff out. The healthy things stay in and the unhealthy things stay out. Here are the different types of boundaries that exist: physical, intellectual, emotional, sexual, material, time, and spiritual. Take the time to read the definitions and also write about what boundaries you want to set. What good stuff do you want to keep? What bad stuff do you want to kick out and make it stay out? Feel free to write it down in your handout. And we'll see you in the next class.